a regular flight from the US to Taiwan. The plane carried 274 passengers. An unprecedented story. The plane suddenly plunged. Can they overcome this nightmare? Join us on the challenging journey of Flight 006 to see how limits and courage are pushed to the extreme. February 19, 1985, Taoyuan International Airport, Taiwan. Flight number CAL 006 of China Airlines has a regular schedule from Taipei International Airport, now Taoyuan International Airport, to Los Angeles International Airport, California, USA. This is a regular 11-hour flight route. The aircraft used is the Boeing 747 SP-09, a new variant of the Boeing 747. This version is designed to be shorter and have a slightly wider fuselage to optimize flight range, improve fuel efficiency, and meet the specific requirements of long-haul flights. It is also equipped with 4 powerful General Electric CF6-50 engines, effectively meeting the needs of transporting goods and passengers on international flights. Piloting the aircraft was Min Yuan Ho, 55 years old, with 15,500 flight hours. Assisting him was First Officer Juiwei Chong, 53 years old, with 7,700 flight hours. Flight Engineer Kuopin Wei, 55 years old, with 15,500 flight hours. And there were also 2 relief crew members, Relief Captain Qianyuan Liao and Relief Flight Engineer Shilong Su, for shift changes. In addition, there were 17 flight attendants and 251 passengers. This aircraft, the 006 pilots had noted, had experienced occasional issues with the Boeing 747's number 4 engine, which did not provide sufficient thrust, even affecting the aircraft once at an altitude of 43,000 feet and once at 41,000 feet. Maintenance engineers had performed various maintenance procedures, including replacing fuel filters, checking propeller controllers, and other filters, but the problem was not resolved. After the first 4 hours of flight, the 3 main members of the flight crew, Captain Ho and First Officer Chong, were allowed to leave the cockpit to switch shifts with the 2 relief pilots. They were allowed a maximum of 5 hours of rest before having to return to perform their next duty. However, Captain Ho did not get a good night's sleep because after only 2 hours, he returned and sat in the co-pilot's seat, looking very tired. At 10:11 a.m., the aircraft had flown for over 9 hours and was at an altitude of 41,000 feet, 654 kilometers northwest of San Francisco. The weather at this time was experiencing some minor turbulence, so the captain accelerated the Boeing to quickly pass through it. However, for some unknown reason, the aircraft's number 4 engine suddenly produced only about 2/3 of the power compared to the other engines. Observing the difference in thrust, Engineer Wei moved the control lever of the number 4 throttle back and forth to see if it could return to normal. Observing that the output power did not change, the engineer immediately informed the captain that the number 4 engine had flamed out. The low power generated by the number 4 engine began to cause the aircraft to veer slightly to the right. Immediately, the autopilot system adjusted by lowering the left wing and using the ailerons to try to rebalance the aircraft. Immediately, the autopilot system adjusted by lowering the left wing and using the ailerons to try to rebalance the aircraft. As the aircraft began to veer more strongly to the left, the air resistance increased, causing the power of the engines to decrease. Concerned that the aircraft was rapidly losing altitude at 41,000 feet, the captain asked the first officer to contact Oakland Air Traffic Control and request a flight altitude more suitable for the operation of 3 engines. Then he continued to ask the flight engineer to restart the number 4 engine. It was completely ineffective. Things were starting to turn against the flight crew at this point. At this time, the captain was focused on the decreasing speed of the aircraft, unaware that it was severely veering to the right. The captain disconnected the automatic performance management system, then manually lowered the nose of the aircraft, but could not stop the deceleration. The decrease in speed reduced the effectiveness of control surfaces such as the ailerons and rudder. The inoperative number 4 engine created greater drag, causing a right bank. The autopilot attempted to rebalance the aircraft by adjusting the left wing. However, the autopilot's maximum intervention was only 22.9 degrees. As the aircraft further decelerated, the effectiveness of the 22.9-degree bank also decreased. Having reached its limit, the system could no longer intervene. As a result, the aircraft gradually banked to the right. In the next minute, the 747 continued to bank more and more. The captain continued to accelerate to salvage the situation. However, he realized that the autopilot was no longer effective, so he decided to disconnect it from manual control. As soon as the autopilot was turned off, the support for left-wing leveling was also lost, and the Boeing was now banked 45 degrees to the right. Passing 90 degrees, the aircraft began to invert and fall. Falling at a high rate of speed, the pilots did not have time to react. Just seconds later, the aircraft was engulfed in a cloud, completely losing their visibility. Unable to determine direction, as a reflex, the captain pulled the control stick back sharply, inadvertently causing the aircraft to dive even more terrifyingly. Within 33 seconds, the aircraft plunged 10,000 feet, performed a 360-degree roll, and dangerously decelerated, throwing passengers into extreme panic. The two pilots in the cockpit were completely disoriented, struggling in vain to regain control. The aircraft continued to plummet with tremendous acceleration, scattering debris, before suddenly pulling up at 19,000 feet, generating a 5G impact force. However, the recovery was only temporary. The aircraft quickly went into freefall again, with severe structural damage. At an altitude of 11,000 feet, the pilots luckily saw the horizon, regained their bearings and control, bringing the aircraft out of freefall. After falling over 31,000 feet, the aircraft finally stabilized at 9,600 feet, saving 274 passengers from the brink of death. Although the engines were operational again, the number 4 hydraulic system was completely damaged, and an emergency was immediately declared. Following the terrifying incident, the crew diverted to San Francisco, despite the aircraft's severe damage. Among the 274 passengers, 2 were seriously injured, several others sustained minor injuries, and a flight attendant suffered a back muscle strain. Fortunately, most passengers were wearing seatbelts, which helped minimize the consequences. The NTSB conducted a comprehensive investigation, but faced difficulties due to the cockpit voice recorder data being overwritten. Investigators had to rely on crew testimony and flight data. However, the pilots' testimonies did not align with reality. They claimed the indicators malfunctioned and the engines stopped working, while in fact they were operating normally. The NTSB concluded that the captain had become too reliant on the autopilot and lacked full awareness of the situation. When the autopilot reached its adjustment limit, the aircraft rolled and the captain did not react in time. Lack of manual flying experience and fatigue due to sleep deprivation also contributed to the incident. The root cause was a faulty number 4 engine control valve, which led to the dangerous chain of events. The Boeing was later repaired and continued operating, before being retired in 2005.